Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell's phone rang at 6 in the morning, 3 days after her initial meeting with Captain Thornfield. The caller identified himself as Sir Marcus Pemberton, Cabinet Secretary and head of the Civil Service. His tone was formal but carried an underlying tension that immediately put Sarah on alert. "Inspector Mitchell, I need to see you in my office within the hour. This concerns the royal matter you've been investigating." Sarah had expected this call. Word of her investigation had undoubtedly reached the highest levels of government by now. The relationship between the police and the royal household was complex, governed by centuries of protocol and modern legal frameworks that sometimes conflicted with each other. Whitehall was already bustling with early morning activity when Sarah arrived at the cabinet office. Sir Marcus greeted her personally, a courtesy that emphasized the gravity of the situation. His office overlooked Downing Street, and through the tall windows, Sarah could see the familiar black door of number 10. "Inspector, I'll be direct," Sir Marcus began as they sat down. "Your investigation has created a significant problem. We've received formal complaints from the royal household about harassment and unauthorized intrusion into private financial matters." Sarah had anticipated this response. "Sir Marcus, I'm investigating allegations of criminal activity. The fact that the accused happens to be royal doesn't change my obligations as a police officer." "I understand your position," he replied. "But you must understand the broader implications. We're dealing with constitutional issues that go far beyond normal criminal proceedings. The monarchy's stability affects our entire system of government." Sir Marcus outlined the government's concerns. The royal family was already dealing with the unprecedented situation of King Charles's abdication. Adding a criminal investigation involving Queen Camilla would create chaos in the media and potentially destabilize the smooth transition to King William's reign. Moreover, he continued, there are national security considerations. The royal family's financial arrangements involve complex international relationships. Some of the accounts you're investigating are connected to diplomatic activities that could be compromised by public exposure. Sarah listened carefully, but remained unmoved. "With respect, sir, none of that changes the fundamental question. If crimes have been committed, they need to be investigated regardless of who committed them." The meeting continued for over an hour, with Sir Marcus presenting various arguments for why the investigation should be handled differently. He suggested internal royal audits, private resolution procedures, or transferring the case to a specialized unit with experience in sensitive political matters. Sarah rejected each proposal. The evidence Captain Thornfield had provided was too serious to be swept under the carpet of diplomatic convenience. She had already begun formal procedures, and backing down now would set a dangerous precedent about the rule of law in Britain. As she left Whitehall, Sarah knew her investigation had entered a new phase. She was no longer just investigating potential financial crimes. She was challenging the unwritten rules that governed the relationship between the crown and the state. Her next stop was the Serious Fraud Office, where she met with Director Patricia Hensworth. The SFO had experience with complex financial investigations involving high-profile defendants, and Sarah needed their expertise to trace the missing funds properly. The amounts and methods suggest sophisticated money laundering, Patricia explained as they reviewed the evidence. The use of Channel Islands accounts, the timing of transfers, the layered transactions. This isn't amateur hour. Someone with significant financial knowledge planned this operation. The SFO agreed to provide technical support for the investigation, but Patricia warned about the challenges ahead. Royal finances are notoriously opaque. They operate under different rules than normal citizens or even government departments. Getting access to all the records you need will require legal battles at every step. Meanwhile, Captain Thornfield was facing increasing pressure from the royal household. He had been placed on administrative leave pending a security review, and his access to royal properties had been suspended. Anonymous sources were briefing journalists that he was a disgruntled employee with a history of mental health issues. "They're trying to destroy my credibility," James told Sarah when they met at a discreet location in central London. 24 hours after our first meeting, stories started appearing in the tabloids questioning my stability and suggesting I had gambling debts. The character assassination was systematic and brutal. Journalists received leaked information about James's divorce 5 years earlier, his financial struggles after leaving the military, and alleged incidents of unprofessional behavior during royal duties. None of the accusations were substantiated, but they created a narrative of an unstable man seeking revenge against his employers. "I expected this," James said with weary resignation. "They used the same tactics against other staff members who raised uncomfortable questions in the past. The difference is that I documented everything, and I'm not backing down." Sarah's investigation was making progress despite the political pressure. Financial forensics experts had traced several of the suspicious transfers to personal accounts linked to Queen Camilla. The money had been used to purchase luxury properties in France and Switzerland, expensive jewelry, and artwork that never appeared in official royal collections. The breakthrough came when Sarah obtained access to email communications between Queen Camilla and her private financial advisor, Geoffrey Hartwell. The emails revealed detailed discussions about moving money from charitable accounts to avoid parliamentary oversight. In one particularly damaging exchange, Queen Camilla wrote, "Geoffrey, I need another transfer to cover the Côte d'Azur property renovations. Use the Children's Cancer Foundation account again. That one never gets audited closely." Hartwell's response showed his discomfort with the arrangement. "Your Majesty, I must advise caution. These transfers are becoming increasingly difficult to justify as legitimate charitable expenses." Queen Camilla's reply was imperious. "Geoffrey, your job is to handle my finances discreetly, not to question my decisions. I've been managing royal money longer than you've been alive." The email evidence was devastating, but obtaining it had required a complex legal process. Sarah had to convince a senior judge that there was probable cause to issue search warrants for royal email accounts. The judge's decision was unprecedented, marking the first time in modern history that a court had authorized intrusive investigation of royal communications. News of the investigation inevitably leaked to the press. The first reports appeared in The Guardian, followed quickly by coverage across all major media outlets. The headlines were sensational. "Queen Camilla under criminal investigation. Royal Guard exposes palace fraud. £3 million missing from royal charities." The palace response was swift and coordinated. A statement from Buckingham Palace described the allegations as completely unfounded and suggested that a disgruntled former employee was spreading malicious rumors. They announced their full cooperation with any official investigation while emphasizing Queen Camilla's long history of charitable work. Public reaction was explosive and divided. Social media platforms erupted with debates about royal privilege, the use of charitable funds, and the accountability of public figures. Protest groups organized demonstrations outside royal properties, while monarchist organizations rallied to defend the Queen. The political implications were severe. Opposition parties demanded parliamentary inquiries into royal finances, while government ministers struggled to balance support for the monarchy with respect for legal processes. Prime Minister's question time became dominated by questions about the investigation and calls for greater transparency in royal financial arrangements. Captain Thornfield found himself at the center of a media storm. Reporters camped outside his modest flat, and photographers followed him during his daily activities. The pressure was enormous, but he maintained his composure and his commitment to seeing the investigation through to its conclusion. "I understand why people are angry," he told Sarah during one of their meetings. "The royal family represents something important to many British people. But that's exactly why they need to be held to the highest standards. If they can steal from children's charities with impunity, what does that say about our entire system?" Sarah's investigation had uncovered evidence suggesting the missing funds totaled even more than initially suspected. Additional accounts showed irregular transfers dating back 5 years, potentially bringing the total to over £4 million. Each revelation made the case more serious and the political stakes higher. The legal team representing Queen Camilla had begun aggressive challenges to every aspect of the investigation. They questioned the validity of search warrants, claimed privileged communications, and argued that royal financial arrangements were beyond the jurisdiction of ordinary criminal courts. "They're using every delaying tactic in the book," Sarah explained to her superior, Chief Superintendent Robert Clark. "But the evidence is solid, and we're following proper procedures. This case will succeed or fail on the law, not on royal privilege. Chief Superintendent Clark supported Sarah's investigation, but warned about the pressure they were all under. The Home Secretary has been asking detailed questions about our progress. The Commissioner has been fielding calls from Downing Street. Everyone wants to know how this will end. As the investigation entered its second month, Sarah knew they were approaching a crucial decision point. The evidence against Queen Camilla was substantial and growing stronger with each new discovery. Soon, she would need to decide whether to recommend criminal charges against one of the most prominent members of the British royal family. The consequences of that decision would extend far beyond the courtroom, potentially reshaping the relationship between the crown and the people for generations to come. The morning fog hung thick over Windsor Castle as Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell stepped out of her unmarked police car. The gravel crunched beneath her feet as she approached the imposing stone walls that had protected British royalty for nearly 1,000 years. Today, those same walls would witness something unprecedented in modern royal history. Captain James Thornfield stood waiting by the main entrance, his ceremonial red uniform replaced by a simple dark suit. His usually perfect posture showed signs of strain, and deep lines etched his weathered face. At 52, he had devoted 30 years of his life to protecting the crown. Now, he was about to become the first royal guard in British history to take legal action against the monarchy itself. "Inspector Mitchell," he said, extending a firm handshake. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Sarah had received the call at dawn. A member of the Queen's Guard was alleging theft of nearly £3 million from royal accounts. The caller claimed to have evidence of financial irregularities involving Queen Camilla herself. Such accusations would normally be dismissed as the ravings of a disgruntled employee, but Captain Thornfield's reputation was beyond reproach. "Tell me what happened," Sarah said as they walked toward a small office building within the castle grounds. James's story began 3 months earlier, on the day King Charles announced his abdication. The decision had shocked the nation and sent ripples through the establishment. While the official reason cited health concerns, those close to the royal family knew the truth was more complicated. The king had been struggling, James explained as they settled into his modest office. Not just with his health, but with the pressure. The constant scrutiny, the modernization demands, the financial oversight committees breathing down his neck. He told me privately that he wanted to step aside while he still had some dignity left. The abdication process had been swift, but complex. Constitutional lawyers worked around the clock to ensure a smooth transition to Prince William. Meanwhile, the royal household staff scrambled to manage the practical implications of such an unprecedented event. James had been appointed as the liaison between the outgoing king's household and the incoming administration. His role involved overseeing the transfer of personal effects, managing staff transitions, and ensuring security protocols remained intact during the changeover. "That's when I noticed the discrepancies," he said, pulling out a thick folder from his desk drawer. "The king had asked me to help organize his personal financial affairs. Nothing too detailed, just making sure his private accounts were properly separated from the official royal funds." As James reviewed the financial documents, he discovered something troubling. Several large transfers had been made from accounts associated with Queen Camilla's charitable foundations. The amounts were staggering: £800,000 in January, £1.2 million in February, and another £800,000 just weeks before the abdication announcement. "I thought there must be some mistake," James continued. "These were substantial sums, and I couldn't find any corresponding documentation for charitable disbursements or approved expenses. The money had been moved through a complex series of transactions involving offshore accounts in the Channel Islands. The paper trail was deliberately convoluted, designed to obscure the ultimate destination of the funds. But James's military training had taught him to be thorough, and his years of service had given him access to financial records that few others could examine. "I brought my concerns to Sir Edward Whitman, the King's private secretary," James said. "I expected him to explain the transactions or put me in touch with someone who could. Instead, he told me to forget what I'd seen and focus on my security duties." Sir Edward's reaction had been immediate and hostile. He reminded James that his job was to protect royal persons, not to audit royal finances. He suggested that James was overstepping his authority and warned that continued investigation could result in disciplinary action. But James couldn't let it go. The amounts were too large, the timing too suspicious, and the cover-up too obvious. He began conducting his own quiet investigation, using his security clearance to access additional records and his network of contacts within the royal household to gather information. I discovered that similar transfers had been happening for over 2 years, he told Sarah. Always in amounts just below the threshold that would trigger automatic oversight reviews. Always routed through the same network of offshore entities. And always authorized using Queen Camilla's electronic signature. The pattern was sophisticated but detectable to someone with James's analytical skills. The transfers typically occurred during periods when the royal family's attention was focused elsewhere, during state visits, major public events, or personal crises that dominated the headlines. Sarah examined the documents James had compiled: bank statements, transfer authorizations, correspondence between financial institutions, and detailed spreadsheets tracking the movement of funds. The evidence was compelling, but she needed to understand the context better. Why come forward now? She asked. Why not raise these concerns through internal channels? James's expression hardened. I tried that. After Sir Edward dismissed my concerns, I approached the keeper of the privy purse. He told me the transfers were legitimate charitable donations and that I should trust the Queen's judgment. When I asked for documentation proving the charitable nature of the transfers, he refused to provide it. The situation escalated when James requested a formal meeting with Queen Camilla herself. He wanted to give her the opportunity to explain the transactions before taking any drastic action. The meeting was repeatedly postponed, then, finally, canceled altogether. 3 weeks ago, I received a letter from Royal Legal Counsel, James said, handing Sarah an official document. They informed me that my security clearance was being reviewed due to concerns about my judgment and discretion. They suggested I might be happier in a different position, perhaps outside the royal household entirely. The letter was a clear warning. James understood that his investigation had been discovered and that powerful people wanted him to stop. But instead of backing down, he made the decision to go public with his findings. I've given my life to serving the crown, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I've protected these people with my body, kept their secrets, sacrificed my personal relationships for their security. But I won't be party to theft, and I won't be silenced when I witness wrongdoing. Sarah studied the man across from her. Captain Thornfield's military record was exemplary. He had served in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, completed multiple tours in Afghanistan, and earned commendations for courage under fire. His transition to royal protection duties had been seamless, and his personnel file contained nothing but glowing evaluations. What exactly are you asking the police to investigate? She asked. I believe Queen Camilla has systematically embezzled funds from royal charitable accounts for her personal use, James said bluntly. I believe she used her position and electronic access to authorize fraudulent transfers totaling £2.8 million over the past 2 years. And I believe senior members of the royal household are covering up her crimes. The allegations were explosive. If proven true, they would trigger a constitutional crisis unlike anything Britain had seen in modern times. The idea of a queen consort stealing from charitable funds would destroy public trust in the monarchy and provide ammunition to Republican movements across the Commonwealth. Sarah knew she was stepping into a political minefield, but the evidence demanded investigation. She arranged to take formal statements from James and requested copies of all relevant documents. She also informed her superiors about the nature of the allegations, knowing that such a sensitive case would require careful handling at the highest levels of government. As their initial meeting concluded, James made one final point that would haunt Sarah in the days to come. Inspector, I want you to understand something, he said. I'm not doing this for money or attention. I'm not a disgruntled employee trying to embarrass the royal family. I'm a man who has seen something wrong and refuses to pretend otherwise. If Queen Camilla is innocent, then she has nothing to fear from a thorough investigation. But if she's guilty, then no amount of royal privilege should protect her from facing justice. Outside the castle walls, the modern world continued its relentless pace. Tourists snapped photos, buses rumbled past, and street vendors sold souvenirs bearing the royal coat of arms. None of them could imagine that inside those ancient stones, a drama was unfolding that would challenge the very foundations of the British constitutional system. Sarah drove back to London with James's evidence secured in her briefcase, knowing that her next steps would determine not just the fate of Queen Camilla, but possibly the future of the monarchy itself. The investigation she was about to launch would test the principle that in Britain, no one is above the law, not even those who wear the crown. The fog that had covered Windsor that morning was beginning to lift, but, for the royal family, much darker clouds were gathering on the horizon. Captain James Thornfield had fired the first shot in what would become the most significant legal battle involving the British crown in living memory.